Hello, Whiskey Network. It's Mark Pruett. We have a legend with us today. He needs no introduction, but here are some highlights about him. He's been voted one of the greatest metal vocalists of all time, one of the top hard rock vocalists of the 80s, and the voice of progressive metal. To his credit, he has 25 million records sold. Most importantly, he is a whiskey enthusiast. Everybody, please welcome Geoff Tate. Geoff, it is truly an honor to speak with you today.
Hey, nice to be here.
Great. So let's jump right into it. I understand that you enjoy whiskey, and can you take us down the road of your journey into whiskey? Where did you start?
My whiskey journey, whiskey road.
Sure, yeah.
Well, I think my first taste of whiskey came on my first ever European tour. And it was actually in Ireland, and it was Jamison. Was the first whiskey I ever had, and still to this day one of my favorites. I really like Irish whiskey, and I know at one time, Ireland was there was a couple hundred different distilleries in Ireland, and now it went through a period of time where there was hardly any, like maybe 5 left, and now it's sort of seeing a renaissance with new distilleries coming up and groups of people getting together to create some truly unique whiskey. So that's exciting.
So on your travels, so you say you started out with Jamison, and has there been an evolution to your taste? Have you been able to go around the world and experience new things?
Yeah, I think so. Just getting older and trying different things. I'm a foodie, and I like food from, I like just about anything really. If it's done very well. I've probably gotten a lot more discerning as I've gotten older of what I really like and what I will eat and drink. But I like a lot of different things. If they're well made, well done. On the whiskey side of things, I've tried a lot of different scotches, from Scotland, single malts and blends. I'm kind of an open sponge, I guess, when it comes to things like that.
Is it when you have the food that you enjoy, is it important to pair something up, a whiskey up with it? I mean, much like I understand that you're very much into wine as well, but as much as you would pair wine with food, do you also pair whiskey with food?
Not usually whiskey. I prefer drinking whiskey on its own, more of a after dinner kind of thing,
Okay.
Or if I'm in Ireland or Scotland and I'm having what they call a session, I'll have mostly Guinness or Murphy's beer and kind of offset that with a whiskey,
Yep.
with each round. It's kind of an Irish style of drinking, I guess, to always have a glass of whiskey with your beer,
Something within arm's reach.
Yeah.
Do you prefer a certain flavor profile, or I mean, I know you're very sort of wide in your choices, and you don't maybe have any specifics, but do you gravitate towards any specific flavor profiles?
Well, yeah, I like honey, butter, caramel, vanilla tastes. I like a smoky nose. I like peat. Yeah, I even like some hints of spices, allspice, nutmeg, things like that you can pick up oftentimes in whiskey, especially like the Highland whiskeys, Northern Scotland. They have a spiciness that's really unique, I find, that I like.
What's interesting is you don't meet a lot of people that have the ability to take on sort of the peat and the earthiness of that type of a flavor profile versus more of the honey and the sweeter tones.
Mm-hmm. I like both.
And that's really cool. That's really interesting
Mm.
about your profile. When you have your ritual, you come home and you're doing that glass of whiskey, and you're kind of having that moment. Is there something that you specifically? Is there a daily that you reach for, or is there something that's really common that you just like to go to?
Well, as of late, I've really been enjoying the Jameson Black Barrel quite a
Hmm.
bit, and I got turned on to that from going to the Jamison Distillery in Middleton a couple years ago, and my wife and I run this. We call it Backstage Pass Travel, and we take people on tour with us and take them to different places. And one of the places we take people is the Jamison Distillery, and it's really, really informative. And the people there are just beautiful and so knowledgeable and into what they're doing. Anyway,
Sure.
they have this limited edition Black Barrel that's quite something. It's a big drink, and it has a very round uh, flavor notes that I don't really know how to describe it. I'm still kind of getting to know it, but it does the trick for me. It's sort of my latest go-to.
That's good. That's you made mention of your tour company, and I would definitely love to sort of break out and talk about that a lot, because I think it's very interesting what it is that you're doing and the destinations that you're going to, and talking about that. I do have sort of one follow-up question,
Yeah.
just with regarding whiskey before we jump into that. Um, what do you think of this trend of bands or people being involved with whiskey labels? Is there a chance that we could see, much like your branded wine, could someday we see maybe a branded bottle of whiskey from Geoff Tate?
Oh, I definitely lean that way. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing, actually. It's definitely an art form and a craft, much like music is. And I know it's a lot's been said, comparing music to distilling or winemaking. It is very similar in a lot of ways. And whiskey is something that's had a connection to music since, I guess, at least turn of the century. It became sort of synonymous with rock and roll, in
Hmm.
the 50s. And before that, I think the jazz era, a lot of musicians were enjoying whiskey at that time.
Absolutely.
Um, so it's had a long connection, and I think in the age of branding, um, it's a really great way for a small distillery to gain a lot of attention and notoriety by attaching what they do to a famous musician or celebrity or whatever. And the partnership can, be very beneficial to both people, I think. I know with my wine brand Insania, my winemaker, who's incredible, he does the majority of the hard work, and but I sort of enjoy and help with the tasting, and when we do blending and uh, the grape harvest and that kind of thing. I like to be hands on with that kind of thing, and I think that if I ever did a whiskey, I'd probably jump into it with the same sort of neck deep,
Oh,
sort
of
of
course.
position, because I'm really fascinated by it, and it's yeah, definitely something I'd be look forward to in the future.
Awesome. Well, we can look forward to something like that. Have you been to any of the local distilleries that are up your way? Woodinville, Copperworks, Heritage Distilling. Have you had a chance to partake in any of their products?
Woodinville, yeah, I've been there. Most of the most of the whiskeys I really enjoy are Scottish or Ireland, particularly. So I haven't experienced a lot of American bourbons or whiskeys yet,
Interesting.
and I don't know why. I just haven't leaned that way.
Well, sounds like we need to put together a care package and get you some samples and
Yeah.
get you along your journey. I mean, for me personally, what I think I've come to find is, um, with the Scotch and with the whiskey that's coming out of that particular part of the world, I think they still go back and adhere to the character of smoothness. You know, the idea is you're going to have this kind of smooth, complex experience. You know, the hallmark of American bourbon or American whiskey for me really seems to jump out in the realm of there's just that sort of rough edge. You know, it's I don't want to go back to basics, but if you stop and think about it, something like a Jack Daniel's, you know, Jack Daniel's just has that sort of rough character, and you know, it has sort of the mystique around the brand that helps about a lot as well. But you know, there's a difference, and some people don't have the ability to sort of cross over into that because it is a little more bold on the nose. So it would be interesting as you evolve in your whiskey journey, you know, to know what you think about sort of delving into those areas. You made mention of something about the connection between whiskey and rock and roll, and we recently just interviewed someone else, and we had a pretty in-depth discussion about this. And whether it's rock and roll or whether it's jazz, you hit all the right notes there. There's been a very strong connection. So are there any memories from you being on the road? You've done extensive touring around the globe. Are there any memories that you have that are connected to whiskey? Any stories that you'd be willing to share from that perspective?
Well, for me, and I know a lot of people probably share the sentiment, whiskey and conversation go really well. And for me, that's always been sort of the tradition is, you know, at the end of the evening or towards the end, you switch to whiskey, and that's where you conversate. You know, you sit around a fire or a table, someplace, you know, cozy, and you know, and you have good conversation. And that's kind of been my whiskey experience. Other than I've never had like a bad whiskey experience, you know, like too much. You know, it's a drink for me that I definitely know when to stop. You know? Like some kinds of alcohol, like wine, for example, you can all of a sudden realize, I'm in a different place than I should be right now. But whiskey, I seem to pace myself well with it for some reason.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I think a part of the journey is understanding your limits and understanding how much to enjoy at a particular time.
Sure.
You know, that's almost a ritual. You know, you finish a show or you do something and you're having a conversation. If you think to your, you know, any of the things that you've done, you finish an album, your touring company, you finish an 8-day run with a bunch of guests. You know, do you have similar rituals with that personally that you connect?
Yeah, and we do an Ireland trip and a Scotland trip where we go to the different distilleries and we take people there, and they get, if they had never tried whiskey, they definitely try it on our tour, and a lot of people can become very familiar and enamored with it and start collecting, you know, interesting obscure bottles, and why not? You know, it's a wonderful hobby.
So do you have a collection?
Small collection. I've been really into Irish and Scottish whiskeys as of late, and one of the places that we take people to, besides the Jamison factory, is out in West Cork, the distillery there in Skibbereen, which is a beautiful coastal town, and they do a black cask whiskey that I really quite like. And there's another place up by Dublin, Wicklow, the Wicklow Mountains. There's this valley called Glendalo, and they do this 13-year-old whiskey that's aged in these 200-year-old oak barrels that they get from Japan, this island in northern Japan. I think it's called Hokkaido. And the trees have to be like 200 years old before they cut them down to make casks, right? That's a really old tree. And I guess they use that wood because it's like porous and soft, and so it tends to soak up a lot of the flavors, and impart them into the whiskey, I guess. So interesting.
But what's the flavor like? What does that taste like?
On that one, it's kind of like it's the traditional, what you would expect, with the slightly smoky. It's not like overdone. And the honey flavors, vanilla. There's some things in it that are quite different. And I think it must be because of the wood. Like sandalwood comes to mind, which I'd never experienced that before. And that was kind of exotic, But yeah, that's an expensive bottle. It's interesting, like price points, how people come up with, what are you going to charge for your whiskey? That's always puzzled me, and then what are people willing to pay for it?
There's definitely a dark art to the idea of something's relative value, but also what are people willing to pay for it? So to that point, are you willing to step up to the plate and pay for a bottle that you like, even if it maybe has a little bit of a steep price point?
Absolutely. I'm ridiculous like that.
That's awesome.
But I wouldn't spend like an exorbitant amount of money on a sofa from my house, but I'd spend, a couple grand on a bottle of scotch that I was interested in.
I think we can all pretty much align with that. I have to agree. I just bought couches, and I think I'm in the same boat that I would go and I'd spend a little more without thinking about it on a bottle of whiskey. I think that's a great segue, because you've mentioned it a couple of times. And as I was doing research about you, this backstage pass travel came up, and I saw several destinations that are on the list. And I don't know if they're all active, but you can help me out here. I saw France, Germany, Ireland, Montana, the Pacific Northwest, and Scotland. And big surprise, Ireland and Scotland are completely sold out. And not as a slight to the other destinations, but I think just look, the popularity and kind of the way it's positioned. Would I want to go to Ireland and spend 8 days hanging out with you, doing all of these really cool things, going to the Guinness Distillery, Temple Bar, Blarney Castle? There's a mention of you going to a gin distillery, Lismore Castle, and then touring around Belfast, and then the Bushmills factory. Scotland is, forgive me if I butcher the name here, but Aberlar, Glenfiddich, Loch Ness, and Edinburgh as well. One of the things that we talk about here at the Whiskey Network is, it's like I've been asking you, these stories and these sort of experiences that you're weaving. And, the one word that I wrote on the page was the experience, and everything that you can do. You get everybody involved. I remember looking at one of the days, I think it was in the Pacific Northwest tour. You can go golfing with you, or you can spend some time with Kelly Gray, or, you can do all kinds of different things. And it's just this amazing experience. How did this come about?
It was sort of an evolutionary process, really, of my wife and I go on excursions all the time whenever we travel, because most of the year we're traveling. And we took some friends with us once through France, and they ended up telling their friends about it, and their friends contacted us and said, "Hey, when you go to France next time, will you take us?" And so we started thinking, well, maybe people would be interested in checking some of these places out. We do have kind of a unique perspective in that we've been to these places many, many, many times, and we know kind of where to go and what to do and how to get there. And so we thought, well, this might be kind of an interesting travel experience we could share with people, and offer this service of basically showing them around, And so that's what we do. We take people with us when we go do stuff. And all these excursions are pretty much centered around music. You know, there's music everywhere. And in Scotland and Ireland, and France, Italy, they're very oriented towards music as well, culturally. So we have musicians that work with us on the tour, and there's every night there's a concert or a pub crawl or something that's associated with music that's going on. And so it's really fun. It's quite fun. It's not it's I think something unique, and for somebody that perhaps had never been to Ireland or Scotland but really wanted to go, this is a great opportunity to go with people who know where they're going. And so you can kind of bypass the potentially bad experiences you could have by not knowing what to do or where to go.
Sure.
Because we've already had those bad experiences. We won't take you there.
Hey, it's interesting, and sort of looking at your career and looking, there's always sort of this message that's in your lyrics, right? You're trying to sort of guide people. So it's kind of interesting that your persona has evolved into this thing to where, you're taking people on these sort of guided journeys, and you're showing them these experiences. And I think that that's something that's really important about this. How many times a year do you do these trips?
We do, I guess, maybe, I don't know, actually. It varies depending. Like we spent 4 weeks in Ireland doing back-to-back trips with people. We've done 3 weeks in Italy, 2 weeks in France. We do a German thing where we go every year at harvest time, when we harvest all our grapes for our Insania wine. So we have everybody come to the winery, and we spend a week there harvesting grapes and celebrating the harvest with food and drink and sightseeing in the area. And it's a pretty darn fun trip. It's one of my favorite ones. But that's a once a year thing. But some of the other ones do multiple weeks throughout the year.
The two things that I wrote down about Germany were visiting the winery. So I immediately caught onto that. But the other thing was the Alpine slide. The Alpine slide just, it just looks like a blast. I would need a drink after that, but it does look like a blast.
Americans love that because it's so different than our culture. We have like rules about everything, and we're like a litigious society. So there's, forms you have to fill out and all this stuff. Not there. No, you just get on this Alpine slide and go.
Yeah. I saw
no
the picture. Right, exactly. You're sitting literally like on a plastic chair that's put onto a track, and there's a 3,000-foot drop that's just a few feet to your left.
And you hurtle down there with no seat belts or no nothing connecting you to it at all, but just gravity.
But it sounds still like an incredible experience.
It is.
But then you're also doing these tours, Pacific Northwest and Montana, and there's a great nod to the history in those spaces. Montana ghost towns. There's a sapphire mine tour of the hot springs, and there's definitely a look at the native heritage. And then the Pacific Northwest, there's a ton of historical sites that you go through. You take rides on all the different ferries. Sounds like a fantastic time. And the fact that it gets tied back to whiskey is a wonderful thing. I would hope that people would want to jump all over that. Anything else about Backstage Pass travel? I mean, it sounds like an incredible thing.
It's something that I was so I was shocked that I enjoy it so much. I really love it. It's so fun to do because it takes you out of this norm. Well, it takes me out of the normal schedule of touring, and it's unique because you sort of see a lot of these places through the eyes of somebody that's there for the first time, and you remember the wonder that you felt, or the amazement, or the feeling of wow, this is so different than anything I've ever experienced before.
Sure.
Sometimes we get jaded with our everyday schedules and what we do, and it's hard to appreciate, that you're there oftentimes until you're not there. But yeah, I'm having a great time doing it, and I'm looking forward to May when it begins again. Now that the COVID's
Yep.
lifting and things are changing for the better now, so things are starting to look very positive.
The smile on your face tells that story. Absolutely. It's absolutely there.
Mhm.
The best thing of all, and something that I think we've sort of skirted around, is I believe that all of these tours end up with an evening with you performing with an all access pass. And
Yeah, a lot of them do. A lot of them do. Some of them
okay.
don't, but some of them
Some
do.
of them don't. Okay.
Yeah.
And really, that's another fantastic thing that I was reading into the descriptions is this is literally you doing this. This is not you have a company do this for you and you make appearances. It's not you at the airport with a sign saying, hey, Mr. Smith, I'm here to pick you up. But also at the same time, it's literally unprecedented access to where it's you who's putting this on. Is that right?
Oh yeah, and actually, I do go to the airport many times and pick people up. I'm kind of the designated driver a lot of times, so yeah, they jump in the van with me driving, and we turn the radio up really loud and and rock out as we're driving to the first destination.
I got to go on one of these trips, man. I have to go just as a milestone in my life. I got to go on one of these trips. You're right. 2021, COVID is lifting. I wish you much success from that perspective, and I really hope that you get out a whole heck of a lot more. I did see from the music perspective, I did see today that there were some dates posted to where you're going to be touring here in the U.S. I hope you get down here to Southern California. Is there any new music in the works, or is there anything from that perspective? Tell me what's going on.
Well, I have an interesting album that's just getting released in April. It's called Sweet Oblivion, Relentless, and it's a collaboration that I did with my Italian record company, Frontier, and a bunch of Italian musicians who I've only met one of them in person. The rest of them, we made this entire album over the internet, working in different studios in different places in the world. And it's really a fun sort of project, cool music. And yeah, I think the first single just came out like 2 weeks ago, and the album comes out in April. Sweet Oblivion, Relentless. Check it out.
Relentless. So is there a chance that you're going to tour behind that record or weave it into your set?
I don't know if I'll tour that record, but I'm definitely going back out on tour starting in April. We have dates in Ireland, I believe, and in Scotland and the UK. And then in the fall, we come to America and resume our tour that got postponed, last year when COVID hit. So I'm looking forward to that, getting back out on the road. And we're performing the Empire album, which is a pretty well-known album with Queensryche fans. We're performing that album in its entirety because it's the 30-year anniversary of the album. 30 years, can't believe it.
No kidding, 30 years, where has the time gone? And if you don't know what Empire is from Queensryche, you've been living under a rock. Come on, everybody knows what that record is. Give me a break. Interesting question about that, if you'll indulge me a little bit. I know we've talked about whiskey and travel, but something about how did you approach the songwriting process being separate? An ocean between you, your friends in Italy. How did that come about?
They proposed it, and it was fun because, well, I knew the one guy, Aldo, who I'd met a few times when on tour in Italy. And he and I started a conversation, and that led to us exchanging some musical ideas, and then it started expanding. Like all music, you start with a sketch, and that gets elaborated on until you have a big picture. And so we would pass the music back and forth via the internet, transferring files back and forth until we had what we liked, and then it just came time to mix it and make sure that it was all balanced and all that, and that was pretty much normal. But the actual writing over and sharing it was cool, because I would send him a file, and a couple hours later he'd get back to me and go, oh yeah, well, I really like this section here, and he'd highlight that and send it back to me. And then I'd take that section and I'd expand on that, and I'd send it back to him, and then we'd sort of start piecing things together until we had the song the way we liked it.
So it's just as fulfilling as being in the same room with somebody and just kind of playing off with each other. It's just you're hitting send on the email and exchanging files.
Yeah, and we're talking like we are, like you and I are right now.
Great.
And maybe he'd get his guitar out and play a piece just to give me an idea, that kind of thing. And it works really well, actually. Funny enough, a lot of time that you spend in the studio when you're face to face is spent wasting time telling stories and just the everyday stuff that you go through and you communicate with, right? Well, in this situation, there's not a lot of that. So your time is spent actually making something,
Yep.
So there's less downtime, I'll say. It's more of you're really in a creative zone, and you can stay there for a long period of time without getting distracted.
I recently spoke with a singer-songwriter from New York, and he talked a little bit about inspiration for one of his new albums. And of all things, it was sort of a weird incident that happened on the subway in New York. You've been to New York tons of times, so you probably understand what a great but strange city that is. Is it similar for you that sometimes you see something and you go, you know what? There's a song there. There's a song there.
Absolutely. I'm a very visual person, and so I take that in a lot. I've been to there's London. The city of London has been very inspirational to me at various times in my life. Paris, New York. I wrote an album with Queensryche called Operation Mindcrime. Living in Montreal, Quebec, I found that place to be incredibly inspirational at that point in my life. It's you find inspiration in the strangest, unlikely places, but then when you experience it, you have a responsibility, I think, as an artist to do something with it, in some way.
Mr. Tate, with all due respect, let's not just gloss over Operation Mindcrime, kind of like that, because Operation Mindcrime is basically one of the best concept albums written in modern music history. And I think it's important. It's important to point out its place in history, not just from the perspective of a fan, but from the perspective of the big picture. So much was born and influenced from that record, and it is an incredible record. So let's not gloss over the importance of that as a part of your impact to rock history. That is absolutely fantastic. Well, listen, I appreciate your time today. There is something that we do to close our interviews, and it is a quick 5 questions. We ask all of our guests these 5 questions, and these are the most popular questions in our social media community in some form. So it's always interesting to talk to folks and get their perspective on these things. So if you don't mind, I'd like to throw the questions at you, if that's
Sure.
all right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Now I'm nervous for some reason.
No, don't be nervous. It's not a test. Just
okay, good.
tell me the answer that comes right off the top of your head, and you're fine. We'll start off with an easy one. It's a softball. What was the last whiskey, bourbon, or Scotch that was in your glass?
That would be, um, God, what was it? It was an open 14-year single malt.
Very nice. Very nice.
I like one. I could just
Can't go
finish
wrong.
that bottle.
Can't go wrong with that.
I just recently, I had some house guests for a couple months. A couple of guys that I work with in my music career, and they're both Scottish, and so we did a lot of whiskey drinking while they were here.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Those are the stories I wanted to hear, Geoff. Come on.
Well, my neighbor who I have a neighbor, I just moved into this new house, and I don't know my neighbor very well because of COVID, right? And but I was standing out taking the recycling out and setting it by the curb, and he was doing the same thing. And he commented about the amount of whiskey bottles in my recycling. He's never seen that many whiskey bottles before.
That's actually a running joke that happens once in a while in the social media community for us as well. Is, hey, when the trash man comes and knocks on your door and says, "Hey, man, you might have a problem from all the bottles that are happening," but no, trust me, we get you from that perspective. When you drink whiskey, do you prefer to drink from a specific type of glass?
Well, I like my whiskey neat. So, I'm not too picky about it, although I like to spend a lot of time with my nose in the glass. So I like that traditional, what they call it, Glencairn glass. I like that quite a bit.
Okay.
But then again, I like the hand feel of a more, I don't know what it's called, the short, fat glass, with
low ball rocks glass. Yeah.
Yeah, like a rocks glass. I like the hand feel of that. But yeah, I like to get my nose down in it and really appreciate for me, the nose of a whiskey is a big part of drinking whiskey. I could spend an hour just smelling it even before I taste it,
Somebody told me that when you nose a whiskey, there's 3 points. There's one side of the glass, there's the middle of the glass, and then there's the other side of the glass. And they all represent different things, right? It's the sides of the glass are the top, right? This is sort of what you're getting. These are the floral notes if it's there, or these are the sweeter tones. And what you get in the middle is more of what's deep down inside of the barrel. So, these are going to be, either earthy leather type stuff or really sort of the deep honey sweet is going to come out of that. So yes, I fully agree that it's a sensory experience. It's the color of it. It's the smell of it. It's getting that initial taste on your tongue. And you don't need a specific type of glass. You can just do whatever you could do whatever you want. There is no right answer there. In your collecting, in your tasting whiskey, do you have a unicorn bottle that you've been chasing?
I don't. I'm still chasing it. But I do like to go to, when I travel, I like to go to different distilleries and try what they have, and those are becoming easier to find nowadays, which is a test to the popularity of distilling. I like to see that. Well,
I hope we can make a promise to one another here today, and hopefully there's an opportunity when you have more projects, or if COVID lifts and you've got a ton more things going on and you'd like to talk more whiskey, if you ever find your unicorn bottle, or if you have a great answer for that, please come back and talk to us about that, because I'd really love to know what bottle captures your attention as such.
I will let you know.
Beautiful. Definitely. Now, here's a hypothetical. I'm looking for a gift for a friend. The budget is somewhere between $50 and $75. What would you recommend that I buy?
Oh gosh, I would say, God, what's that called? Tomatin. It's a Highland distillery in Scotland, way up there. They have this specialty bottle called the Kubakan, I think it's called. A lot of people are jazzed about that. I haven't tried it yet. I'm going to try it in May, because we're going to that distillery. They only make it 1 week a year, this particular Scotch. So I'm going to try it.
Now that I definitely want to hear about for sure. And that is a great, unique answer as well. Okay, finally, the last question. Do you have a favorite toast?
A favorite toast?
Yes, sir.
No, I don't really have a favorite toast. I just
You don't have
I like to look people in the eye when I toast, because if you don't, that means you have 7 years bad sex. Don't want that. So yeah.
Nope, don't want that.
Don't want that.
A memorable toast that someone has given, anything of that nature?
Boy. There's probably something but I can't recall right offhand what that.
All right. So pro tip, when you drink with Geoff, less talking, more drinking.
Yes.
That is absolutely perfect. Well, listen, again, I think this opportunity with Backstage Pass travel tours is a fabulous opportunity. If you are into whiskey, it covers both Ireland and Scotland, and there are some incredible stops. If you are into any of the other places that they go to, Germany, the once a year for its connection to wine, and of course the no fault alpine slide that you can go on, and the many other destinations. We can look forward to your new music. We can look forward to your tour here in the States later in the year. I am very happy to have spoken with you today. I want to thank you for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Mark. It's great talking to you, and I really like what you guys are doing with the network. It's fascinating.
Thank you very much. And like I said, I hope there's an opportunity anytime you'd like to come back and discuss things further from a whiskey perspective. We'd love to have you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Take care now.
Yep. Take care, Geoff. Appreciate the time. Bye-bye.